What is the point of the licensing division in Trinidad and Tobago? I can't speak for anywhere else, but in Trinidad and Tobago, what is the point of the licensing division? If I were to kind of guess what the idea behind the licensing division would be, is that, there's a possibility that without rules and regulation, people on the road could get on kind of crazy. So the licensing division is something coming from the state to attempt to bring order on the nation's roads. So you don't just get to go onto the nation's roads just so. You have to be able to show that you're proficient at driving, etc. Your cars you can't just bring anything and everything and call it a vehicle and put it on the nation's road and be allowed to do that. They will make sure that the vehicles on the nation's roads are up to a certain mark, and by making sure the vehicle quality is up to a certain mark, making sure the driver quality is up to a certain mark, they ensure that road safety is also up to a certain mark. I think, though, whenever we have governments getting into making sure that people are safe, things could get kind of sketchy, because people have a right to their own level of risk. People have a right to that. So when you're out there to make sure that they're safe, you're kind of inhibiting some of that right. Now, the reality is sometimes in making their own selves unsafe, you can make someone else also unsafe, and that's where governments come in. That's a lot to do with why they do what they do. But what are we to say then if the main functions of the licensing division in making sure that cars are roadworthy and making sure that drivers are car-worthy, then if they aren't even doing that function well, what are we to say? Would it make sense that they continue with certain other parts of their function that are supposed to go along with the two main parts there? Would it make sense that they continue with just the minor parts while ignoring the major parts? Or might it make sense that they focus on those major ones and forget the minor ones for the moment? Forget about them until you are able to do them well. And to some extent, that is the very argument being made by one of the opposition MPs here. Dr. Munilal, don't penalize drivers if motor vehicles not inspected, says opposition MP. The government must take action to ensure that motorists do not pay any penalties or face a $5,000 charge if their motor vehicles are not inspected, according to opposition MP Dr. Rudal Munilal. Speaking at a news conference at the opposition leader's Port of Spain office yesterday, Munilal also warned that people are being placed at risk and made potential targets for bandits with the move to utilizing the Attoboldan Stadium and Larry Gomez Stadium to facilitate the transfer of vehicles. He said these transactions are usually done in cash, and therefore people now have to move around with money and face bandits. He noted the ongoing calamity taking place where there is the headache of differing information at the licensing division electronic record database with the physical paperwork motorists have. So what he's speaking about there at the beginning is the lines that are getting kind of ridiculous. Now, they have opened up the possibility to doing the vehicle transfers. If someone bought a vehicle from another person, you have to transfer the official name on the official certified copy. So in order to do that, you had to go into the licensing division. They're opening stadiums now to potentially allow for that. The problem is, in order to transfer those vehicles, sometimes it costs a significant sum of money. Significant where it's a nice sum for a bandit, tempting, but insignificant enough that you could generally walk around with cash, 4,000, 5,000 in that kind of range, and a little lower sometimes. So that's a really nice kind of thiefable cash money. If you're thinking as a bandit, that's a kind of thiefable amount. I understand what the MP is saying there, and make no doubt that Trinidad and Tobago is indeed a kind of high crime area. So those are considerations that you should be taking. The second thing he was referring to there is the fact that there are some kind of discrepancies going on right now because, well, the licensing division is attempting to move into the 21st century. 23 years into the 21st century, our licensing division is really attempting to finally move into the 21st century. And they're trying to digitize things. The record should be digital, and that makes sense. But the problem is that some people who have a digital record, the digital record isn't matching to the physical record, and they're saying it's not their fault. They inputted all the correct information. They don't know where it all went wrong. Munilal said people are facing oppression, having to form queues from 2 a.m. to have their vehicles inspected. And he said in the face of this, Works and Transport Minister Rohan Sinanan sought to blame the people for not getting inspections done earlier. I don't think that's a viable blame. I don't think you could blame the people for that because you don't know what the people were going through. You do not know the reasoning behind it. Bear in mind, the reason there was this time you gave off was because of the pandemic and understanding the difficulties people were going through during that time. So obviously, for sure, there would be obviously a significant number of people who could have gotten some things done before, and now they took a little long, and, well, the deadline is upon us. I think that is true. I do. But there are some people who would be stuck in there who had nothing to do with delaying the time. This is just the only time they could have gotten. And if you're telling me that they're going to have to pay $5,000 just because of whatever other circumstances, and they're paying that to the government, that sounds very advantageous. That sounds cruel. Now, the thing is, I read before that the licensing division, speaking about the monitoring of these inspection stickers, they're saying that they are yet to give out any fines for these offenses. So they are not yet giving out fines for the missing stickers. They're giving out warnings, which I think makes sense. Understanding the situation the country is currently in, I think it makes sense to give out warnings for these things instead of necessarily trying to take $5,000 from people fresh out of a pandemic. Now, the question I could have is the inspection on a whole. Do the roads we have match to this level of high inspection, this high level of inspection? The level of inspection where basically you have to have a tip-top performing, nearly perfect car to really get your inspection done. Do our roads match to that perfect level? And here's the thing. You could say that, well, the roads might not match, but what we're looking for is the level of safety nonetheless. And maybe, but I think by doing that, you're actually culling the level of people that could get access to using vehicles in the country. Now, yes, Trinidad has a lot of cars. Lots of people in Trinidad have vehicles. Lots of people have multiple vehicles. But there are also people with none. And people who are struggling, and people who a vehicle takes a significant amount more out of their budget than it may have needed to. And I wonder, this vehicle inspection business that we're doing here in Trinidad and Tobago, is this something that makes sense for our economy, for our country? Or is it something that we saw as a good idea in other places, that the world is progressing in this direction? Every progressive country is inspecting vehicles that they allow on their roads, so we would do that too. Personally, I am not in favor with following the direction of every progressive country because, for example, the United States, which might be the beacon of that example in most cases, you look at some of the statistical results coming out of those places and you kind of get the impression that maybe I am not totally interested in following in their direction because I don't really want to end up where they ended up. If you walk along the same path that someone else walked along, you're very likely going to end up exactly where they ended up. So do we want to end up exactly there? So is it that we're following someone, or is this something that we think really is suitable for our economy? And I'm asking a question like that, leading straight into an article I saw out of Jamaica was this last week, about a week ago, 7 or so days ago, according to when you're looking at this. The Jamaican authorities, they had the idea of implementing car seats as a requirement. And then the drivers were like, no, this is not the position our country is at. And they're like, you're not going to get to do this. They kicked up enough of a fuss. and the authorities reversed it. No more child seat requirements. Government bows to public pressure. From the 7th of February, the Jamaica Observer, the government has abandoned the requirement of child restraint systems for children up to 12 years using public transportation. The about turn comes less than a week after the Road Traffic Act took effect on February 1st and following public outcry from operators of public transportation as well as parents. Minister of Transport Audley Shaw outlined the changes in a ministerial statement in the House of Representatives Tuesday afternoon. By way of compromise, children under 1 year must be restrained by an adult. So, when you hear things like this, I'm sure that some people who are leaning more to the side of safety, as I said, the government choosing to make you safe, make yourself safe is a kind of dicey thing anyway. But some people who lean more towards that safetyism side, they would be like, this is insane. You're putting babies at risk. Children are more at risk now. And yes, that might be true, but what's the calculable risk level more that the children are in? How many children are lost per year? It's a brutal question, but I think this is the more realistic question. How many children are lost per year in road traffic accidents that would not have been lost were they in a car seat? What's that number? Do we have a number for that? That this child died in a traffic accident, and if there was a car seat in this situation, very likely they wouldn't have died. How many? What's the number on that? I presume, this is totally my guess here because I didn't try to even find that number. I'm not sure there would be that number anyway, but I would presume that number is extremely small. Probably zero. Very likely zero in the islands. And if that's the case, if there's some increased possible safety for the child that is going to cost the average person in the society more than is accustomed and comfortable in our society for a negligible increase in the level of safety, does it even make sense? And it's not like there isn't an alternative. You are replacing an alternative here. By way of the compromise, children under 1 year must be restrained by an adult. Those 1 to 3 years old are allowed to travel with no restraint or be restrained by an adult. The other changes are as follows. Children 3 to 6 years old may travel without restraint, restrained by an adult or a lap belt. Children 6 to 9 years old may travel without restraint or with a lap belt. Now, this is what I'm saying. Are you telling me that these changes that are more suitable to the Caribbean countries, this case Jamaica, I think this is a good step in Jamaica. This shows that the government is listening. This is the purpose of government, not to just copy and paste legislation and rules and policy that they saw from the bigger, more advanced progressive countries. No. Look at the laws, look at our culture, look at our society, and see, does this mesh? Does this make sense? The inspections in Trinidad and Tobago, the vehicle inspections, is it more about road safety? If that's the case, let's compare it. The majority of road traffic accidents in Trinidad and Tobago, are they caused by vehicles that are not up to mark, are not up to par? Because if I am to just use I don't have the statistical information. If I'm just to use my observational experience here, when I look at the majority of accidents, they seem to all generally be newer vehicles. It's not people in their old Cortina and their old Box Lancer and their old B10s that's struggling to keep it on the road, who know their vehicle inside out because they change their own parts themselves. Those guys aren't crashing. Those aren't the guys wrapped around poles, generally speaking. They aren't. So what's the purpose of this inspection? Really, what is the purpose? Is it just a way for the government to make money? And the government is now making money by pretty much oppressing the poorer classes of people because the rich people don't care. That's irrelevant to them. In the first place, they're buying new vehicles every year, so their vehicle is automatically inspected. It's the as you go older and older, the older your vehicle is, and generally speaking, that means the poorer you get. Because if you're a wealthy person and you have an old vehicle, that's because you're maintaining that thing. The poorer you get, the older your vehicle get, the harder it becomes to maintain. So punishing people for poorly maintained vehicles really and truly is punishing the poorer people. That's what you're doing. If we want to be clear about it, does that make sense? Does that make the road more safe? You tell me. That's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. Drop a comment. Tell me what you think. Stay tuned for the Mindful Life every weekday night, and I'll see you later.